All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is your brother Muad'Dib. I am back with another segment, The Two Initiates. And we got a really interesting show today. I want to say what's up to my co host, my brother, my fellow initiate, Shahudi. And we're going to really get into some things today. Current event, and a current event that is unfolding and better for those who I consider normies. They know the land is Egypt. We call it Kemet. And there's been some discoveries. So Jahudi, how you doing, brother? Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Peace to everybody. And let's get to it.
Right. So I know it has come across your proverbial desk, the findings in Kemet and what they discovered supposedly under one of the pyramids from space satellite. And here's my thing. Things like this are not surprising to me or, us, because we kind of been acclimated on these types of things years ago. But now, for us to be in our avatar and to be here to experience and witness is it's a great, magnificent thing to be here to watch it unfold.
Absolutely.
So apparently, they have discovered a subterranean city to a degree underneath the pyramid. I think it's the Khafre pyramid. It's not Giza. I don't think.
So no, Giza is the or all
Complex.
three. Yeah, it's the complex, right?
Giza complex. Okay.
Right. But I think it
And
was it Khufu, because that was we used to use back in the day. We used to call you Khufu because we thought you
uh,
looked like Khufu. But anyway, yeah, no. But yeah, it's the Giza complex.
the Giza complex, and so apparently, some independent scientists took it upon themselves to conduct this find, and what they uncovered is mind blowing, to say the least. When you look at the fact that, from what they are reporting, these structures that go down at least a half a mile into the
Right.
earth
Right. Right.
and into another structure that's a half a mile down. So just imagine driving in your car for a half a mile.
Right.
But keep in mind, when you're in a car, when I'm traveling, let's say I'm doing 75 on the interstate, 70, 75. It takes me roughly a minute to cover a mile. But I'm moving at, like I said, 70 miles an hour. So imagine building structures half a mile down, how far you got to go.
Yeah, and let me correct myself. You were right. It is the Capre. If I said differently, but yeah, it's the Capre pyramid. Yeah,
Okay.
like yeah, it's going very extremely deep,
Extremely.
extremely deep. Which that means that hey, a lot of what we or that society or what we've been taught, we're gonna have to revisit that. So I'll let you go ahead from there.
All right. So when you look at the fact that we have these subterranean structures, and that's just the pylon type structures.
Right.
They also said they saw a complex. So virtually, in so many words, you can say a small city underneath the
Yes.
pyramid. Now, let's just put it into context, even from a biblical perspective. The narrative has always been that Hebrew slaves built pyramids. This is what they've taught us since we were
Right.
yay high, taught our
Right.
grandmothers and our great grandmothers. This
It's
is,
in the
yeah,
Bible. The Bible kind of ingratiates that concept that the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt.
right,
Now, it wasn't specifically about building the pyramids, but it was more so about they were slaves and they had to be saved. So yeah,
right. Now, when you look at movies like the Ten Commandments,
yes,
they perpetuate
Charlton
this
Heston.
idea. Yeah, they
Yep,
perpetuate this idea. And when you look at all the Egyptologists, they also had this. The running narrative is it was slave labor that did this. Now, we were going through our schools and we were always taught that the science of the pyramids was so advanced, it wouldn't be given to a slave
there
to
was no
build. To
way.
build.
Yeah, there was no way slaves could have built
Right,
that. Right.
right. So it stands to question if you have a structure that is so complex mathematically, perfectly aligned, stones cut with razor precision.
Razor precision.
That's not slave technology, nor is that technology from a people who would be beaten and giving subhuman living conditions to pull this
Right.
off. There's no
Right.
way.
Right. And I'll say this. How about the logistics of it? How about where you gotta cut the stones? You gotta bring the stones up the Nile River, offload the stones. Can you even imagine, like, I don't have it in front of me, but you're talking about 1 to 2 ton stones going up however many feet in the air. I mean, and so I don't have the measurements, but yeah. So that was done by slaves. Okay.
Now, we were taught better,
Right.
and we were also taught that there was more pyramid structure below than we saw above the sand.
Right.
Only for these types of findings to validate what we already knew. Now, here's the thing. For something of the magnitude that they're reporting, history as we know it has to be revisited and re-questioned, because and here's one of the questions I used to have as a young student. Why did the Commetans, the doorways to the temples, why were they so colossal? You're talking about, regular people who, let's give or take, 8 feet tall, maybe. Well, let's just say not 8 feet tall, but 6 feet, and that's pushing it.
Right.
That's pushing it. But why are the doorways colossal? So, not to divulge too much here, but when the Bible speaks of giants being on the earth at one point, you have to look at the fact that the book of Enoch is not in the Bible for a reason, whether you want to write it off as,
Right. Right.
you know,
Right.
something that's made up. Just use a little common sense and just say, hey, this volume of work is so dense with information that it fills up a lot of gaps and holes in the Bible and answers a lot of questions that the Bible kind of leave open. Because if the giants were here, the Bible doesn't speak in depth on the life of a giant.
Right. What you have, Goliath. He's the main character as far as giants are concerned. But was he the only one?
Exactly.
No, probably not. But yeah.
Exactly. So you're looking at history that technically would be mind-blowing when we really look at the fact that there's so much that has been hidden when it comes to the technology, when it comes to the structures and why they are all over the planet. how they perfectly align with star constellations. And keep in mind, these constellations, they're on the move, and some of them take X amount of, let's say, 1,000 years for it to make its run. So we had to be observing the skies in a particular location for an extended period of time for these things to come around and for us to build structures and align perfectly with them at that particular time to make that juncture. So when you look at what, and we're just talking about Egypt here, there were many advanced civilizations across the planet who mimic this technology, the structures, the design. So it wasn't just isolated. Kemet, from my understanding, was just a climax of systems that reached a particular point on Earth where it was kind of perfected.
On Earth, right?
Yeah.
Like absolutely correct. Like they reached the pinnacle. They were the ones. And then if you look at pyramids outside of the pyramids of Giza, they're still pyramids. They're still built in the same sense. They're still the level of balance from ground up to the point. But it wasn't as refined and perfected as it was done in Kemet.
Right.
But we know the Commetans not only spread their knowledge of building, but also their knowledge of spiritual philosophy to India, to China, to the Americas. That's not our point, but my point is that it wasn't just building. It was more. It was an integral movement, as you know, integral spirituality. That's what we were taught.
Right.
But so to your point, it wasn't just Kemet, but Kemet was the pinnacle in my,
Right.
and from my studies, and not only even the pinnacle of building, but just the pinnacle of spirituality and mystical philosophy.
Right. So it was kind of like the capital
Absolutely,
where it all culminated
where it
into
all came.
one point.
Right, right. And
And
if I can say, and real quick, if I can say this just real quick, everything from Kemet, it's spread out. So you're talking about, maybe 15, almost 20 to 50,000 years ago. Even like prior to after the Paleolithic era, you're talking about civilizations that branched out from from Nubia to South Africa with the Zulu, to Nigeria with the Yoruba and the Igbo, to it's all to Mali, the Dogon of Mali. It all comes from Kemet. And if anybody has anything to say about that, just do your research. So I just wanted to make sure that we understood that, because it was the life, it was the fruit of Africa. It was the high point of African mystical philosophy and religion.
so you take the other traditions. This is why they have such similarities. When you look at the archetypes of the gods, and you look at other pantheons, they are mirror of them of each other. But us not getting too deep into that. Back to now, keep in mind, and I'm gonna have to touch on this. I'm gonna have to do a whole show on this. That there were other civilizations that existed, like Atlantis and Lemuria, and those were different. Let's just say times. Not to get too deep. Here's the thing. The history of this planet is very rich. And what we're speaking on, one section.
Yeah.
One section. But there were so many other that existed here on this planet. This is why we have structures beneath the ocean.
Yep.
We have structures beneath the ice. We have
Yep.
structures that's covered by jungle.
Yep.
It's all here. It's all remnants of past civilizations that existed here. It's just that Kemet was the last of these. What kind of civilization could we call Kemet? It was the last.
Of the high civilization, because if you want to talk about, as far as like high wisdom, high learning, light of the earth type philosophy, that was what Kemet was, because that's what the Greeks took and made Socrates and all these guys, the light of the world. But no, what about Imhotep? What about Amenhotep? What about, you know what I mean? So I didn't mean to cut you, but that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like that's where we were going. Egypt was the light of the world. It was the light of the world.
Right.
Period.
So when you
Period.
look at the different aspects of time, you have these lights. Kemet was the last known light of the world. When they speak of Lemuria and they speak of places like Atlantis, they were also lights, but the last one known to us, who we can actually have physical evidence, it would be Kemet. Now, the structures beneath the pyramid, you have to question, okay, if this is advanced technology, advanced civilization, how does this play into the biblical story? How does this play into Jesus? How does it play into your salvation? How does it play into the Hebrew story of them, coming out of Egypt and being God's chosen and so forth and so on? Like, because now you have to rewrite history, because clearly, and I know there's going to be more that's going to come out of this. Trust and believe, there's going to be more. Once we realize that, hey, the primitive aspect that we've been taught about Kemet, not me, but let's just say we, the primitive concepts and things that we've been taught about Kemet fits into the mold of what the ruling elite want us to know about history. When you have situations like this that kind of shatter the framework for history, now you got to question it all. You have to question it all. Who were the Egyptians for real? And where did they get this knowledge and science? What if we find out that, according to the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth? What if we found out that's not actually the beginning? That's just the beginning of their story.
Right. Of a certain story, right?
Exactly.
Of a story.
What if there's a story that predates that they don't want nobody to know about? What if Genesis is just the beginning of a narrative that they wanted to create for the world and give it to the masses? Because the more they dig, the more they scan, the more they find, I'm telling you, it's going to throw history on its head. They don't want to already admit the fact that, the people in pre-dynastic Kemet were people of color.
Right.
So if it was people of color, now you got to look at us a little different.
And then the thing about pre-dynastic Kemet is that they can't put a date on it. That's the issue.
Right.
See, there's no date. They're like, oh well, 5,000. Come on, stop it. We know if what we call Ethiopia, or not Ethiopia, but Sudan, Somalia, and those areas, in those areas today, we know that's where the first man and woman were fashioned. If it and for those who for those who it's the Adam and Eve story happened in Africa, if you want to really go there. So, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that that was made clear. It happened in Africa. That's the pinnacle, or the genesis of all existence. So yeah.
Now let's entertain this. What if the Adam and Eve in Eden story? What if it's a prototype for something else? What if it's not literal? What if it's a prototype for something else? And then this is where we're going to have to go into the Bible and unpack some of the verses. But you still have to wonder and put into context and think and question, if these structures are what they are, then the people who resided in Kemet, we can't even put a date on them, nor the civilization technically. And then you have to question, if they were that advanced, why do we have a watered down, almost like fairy tale story of creation?
Right.
Someone or something had to give birth to these people, as well as the technology and information.
Right. Right.
Or let's entertain the thought of what predated Kemet that gave it its fundamentals and its science, and Kemet was the last leg on the race.
Well, I mean, from a practical perspective, um, Kemet was pretty much it developed because of the conditions. It developed because of, the Nile River. It developed because of the agriculture, and it developed because the people had. And so let me say this. So the human constitution. If you have time to sit and think, you can come up with anything. You got brothers in prison that can make chessboards out of toilet paper, right? That's because these brothers and sisters have time to think. So going back to the Constitution, and what made Kemet so great was it was the conditions. If you look on the map, it's really Lower Egypt versus Upper Egypt. So you're talking about Nubia, you're talking about the Nile River flowing into the Mediterranean, and you're talking about an agricultural gold mine. So when you have that, when you have food, when you have clothing, you have shelter, we going back to the simple principles that we talked about back when we were coming up and learning. So when you have everything set in place, you have agriculture, you have education, you have time to think and reflect. That gives birth to what Kemet was, and what we see that it is today, which is the Giza plateau that nobody can replicate. Nobody can. Nobody can. Nope. They don't understand how it was constructed. With all the technology today, it's mystifying to even intellectuals of today. So
Even if you look in the Grand Canyon now, they're finding Egyptian tombs and relics in the Grand Canyon. So you're talking about a culture that expands the planet and influenced the planet on so many different levels. And like we said earlier, Kemet was just the climax. It was the last leg on the race, but it was the climax of spiritual culmination coming together and being a light that we can physically go and touch. A lot of civilizations that might have predated what we know as Kemet, a lot of this stuff is covered or under the water or in the ocean, but it's here. We just don't have access to it. But Kemet is a place we can go actually touch and study, and they got the artifacts and the statues and so forth and so on. So we say all this to say that there's going to be more to come. There's going to be more to come, and as above, so below. So when you look at the fact that we were taught a long time ago, like I said earlier, the amount of pyramid that you see on top, there's more than that on the bottom. So they're
And
just kind of playing catch up.
and isn't that a isn't that the life? Isn't that so, as Saban would say, amazing? Isn't that grandiose? Isn't that grandiose? Like it's a microcosm of how of our consciousness, right? Who we are on the surface is not who we are necessarily from past lifetimes, and what constitutes our personality and our wants, our likes, our needs, our dislikes, our iks, So it goes back to being a mirror of us, just like Horomake, which is the Sphinx. It's mostly lion or lioness, however you want to look at it, but with the head of the pharaoh, right? So isn't that not a reflection of who we are? And in a subtle way, it's telling you like this is who you are. This is what you should aspire to. It's there, and it's so inspiring to know now, especially. And I mean, we already knew. I'm not surprised, but we already knew that there were clues and reliefs and stelaes that were left for us, for those who had reincarnated as, and I'll leave it at that. But to be able to understand and explain and move that concept forward.
That's just like part of the Harakti being buried under sand, and only the head was showing. Only for like, I think it might have been a Bedouin that came along and was like, there's a body, there's more. They had to dig it out.
Right.
So
They did, right. They did,
yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, I remember that.
So when you, and here's the thing, before the end of this cycle, and this is we're going to at some point get into these cycles, but at the end of this cycle, the history of this earth and this planet, plane, whatever you want to call it, has to be revealed. Everything that's hidden has to come forth. There's nothing that the powers that be can do to stop that. They've done everything in their power to erase, bottle up, get rid of this, that, and the third. But there's nothing that they can do to stop the revealing, which is technically the apocalypse. The apocalypse means to reveal. So we're in the revealing process now. And when you reveal truth, things crumble, things get destroyed. Falsehoods that were built up along the way, they get destroyed. It's destruction because the truth is getting revealed. Thus, when people hear the term apocalypse, they think it's bad, it's the end of the world.
The end of the world, right.
It's the destruction of what has been built up in falsehood coming down during the great revealing. So there's going to be much more that's going to come out about Kemet, the planet. We even start talking about what's beyond the ice wall. Because matter of fact, we have a viewer that has a question about the ice wall, and we're going to get to some Q&A later
Okay. Okay.
about one of the guests who asked about the ice wall. But there's more. In some of my research, I've come to the conclusion that there is more land beyond the ice wall. But let's just wait until that egg hatches, and then we'll just have that conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and that's just where we are during this time frame, during the great revealing. But another thing I want to say is the powers that be have been doing for years is trying to convince people that aliens built the pyramids and not people of color. They always will give the credit to off-world beings versus people of color having some level of involvement in the construction of these most advanced structures that exist today. They will not. I haven't saw one publicly. I've read some literature and I've seen some shows here and there where you have people on the record say, "Hey, this was some niggas that did this," straight up. Let's just shoot from the hip. But you're not going to see them in a public space saying, "Hey," they won't even entertain the concept
Right.
that people of color were here and they have their hand in this. It's hard for them to admit that. So
Right.
they'll just say aliens. They'll just say beings off world,
Giants.
whatever. Yeah, all type.
Giants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Hard pill
But
to
yeah,
swallow.
so they were able to cut, stone precise and stack it. Yeah, man. Whatever.
And see, here's where we're going to get into the science of sound. We're going to get into science of crystals. We're going to get into the science of different minerals and the harmonics of the planet and how to levitate things. And all of this is going to be unpacked where we're going. Trust and
Right.
believe.
And then it's funny you say that because so back in our day, when we started with Sabermind, and I was writing. It was going to be like a newsletter about the part one was the power of spiritual music, and then the part two was the mysticism of sound.
Right.
I started writing that. So that, and I look, it's in my garage now. It's funny, but it's funny you say that because that ties into what we're about to get into. Mysticism of sound, tone.
Yes.
And we went through that school in the temple, like so you could go through drumming and then you could go through meditation. It's and then if you get really good, you don't even have to you don't have to say anything. You would just it becomes, you've heard it so much, it becomes a part of your being, and now you reflect and you're able to because remember the sound of the universe that we used to have. So
Right.
no
So
doubt.
yeah, people are gonna have to bear witness to the fact that, and most people already know that when it says in the beginning was the word is sound. The entire universe is
It's
based
the
on frequency.
sound. Absolutely.
Light that you see, it's a frequency. If you pick up a rock, that rock has a particular frequency. All the
A
atoms,
vibration.
yeah, all the atoms in existence that make up what we call physicality are vibrating at a particular frequency. The light spectrum, if it's infrared, it's a frequency. Everything is sound. The entire existence of this dimension is based on sound.
And so to break it down to those who are listening, I can breathe air, but breathing air is more dense than seeing light. But it's all a frequency.
Right. And this
So
is
I can
why.
breathe, but I can see this light here, but that's a different vibration. That's more, the air is more dense. Because of my physical makeup. But yeah.
And this is how I explain to people sometimes how herbs work, how food works. When you ingest food, when you ingest herbs, They're broken down to their molecular structure, and they have a particular frequency that they emit. And our bodies are basically electric. And this is why minerals are so important, because it allows the electrical conductivity of our bodies to function properly when your mineral content is where it's supposed to be. It's like a car battery. Car batteries have water and certain minerals in it so it can maintain its charge. So this entire realm is one big vibration. So when they talk about the primordial waters, it wasn't literal water. It was, imagine a sound that is not making a sound. If you can visualize it, it looks like stillness. Like if you take a hum, almost just a still frequency. If you can look at it on a screen, on a frequency screen, you can have this line going straight across where the vibration is damn near still.
It's nothing. Right.
This is before creation.
Right.
Once you disturb that with another frequency, it'll start rippling.
It vibrates. Yeah.
It'll
And
start
then,
rippling.
and that's creation.
And that's creation. So things come into being as you start to fluctuate the speed at which the sound is affecting this dimension. But anyway, I won't get too far in that. But so yeah, when it comes down to the pyramids and Kemet and the world and human history, everything is going to be topsy-turvy, because we're in the great revealing, and just buckle up, because there's a whole lot more coming, and there's a whole lot more that's going to be questioned, and people are going to have their heart broken, and people are going to draw a line in the sand and say, well, you know what, I don't care what this, that, or the third is, I'm sticking to what I know, which is
Absolutely.
fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but just you're going to bear witness to the fact that
Right.
somebody withheld, lied, changed a lot of stuff, and the universe saying, hey, okay, now it's time. I think it's time for you guys to know what the hell is really going on. And that's what it is. I want to add this one thing. This is kind of off topic, because, well, actually, I'll just go to the Q&A, because Q&A kind of coincides with something that I was going to say. Let me see here. We got a question from a guy, his name's Terrence. He's actually in Canada, and he says, what's beyond the ice wall in relation to our teachings? So you want to take that, or you want me to take it?
You got it.
Okay, Terrence want to know what's beyond the ice wall in relations to our teachings. I'll say this. In relations to our teachings, I think the powers that be have changed our maps. I think the maps we see today are not correct. Do some research, and you may come to that same conclusion. Maps early on showed more land. Our teachings deal with the fact that this world has so much more to offer than what they want us to see. When you look at the ice wall, you keep in mind at some point that ice wall was lush land. And when you look at the different cycles that our planets go through, Earth has been through a couple of cycles where, if you look at the ice age, you look at the fact that there were, big reptiles and lizards and all that type of shit here at one point.
Paleolithic age. Yeah.
Right. So when you look at these different phases in Earth's lifespan, things have changed, moved, shifted, and what was above land, a lot of things that were above land is below the ocean now. And a lot of things that were below the ocean is above land.
Right.
So in relation to the ice wall, I'll just say, And there's a lot that I really could say about the ice wall, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna wait. But let's just say there's more than meets the eye, and I think a lot of the movies that we see now, they're kind of telling you, what the deal is. But if you want to be entertained, then you be entertained. If you want
Right.
to, kind of pierce the veil a little bit and see what they're really trying to tell you, then you do that. So when I watch movies, I'm pretty much decoding.
Right.
So
Yeah. And so I'll say, beyond the ice wall, I think, and this is just from, my study and research and just researching it because being in the military as long as I was, you run into somebody that's been down there, but there's a whole ecosystem, down there. It's a whole ecosystem that would be considered that's beyond the ice wall. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like another when I say ecosystem, that means, hey, there's rivers, there's mountains, there's you know, volcanic eruptions or volcanoes. There's
right,
that it's a it's like it's and I think this ties into what we were talking about as far as the pyramids and what's underneath the ground and the stuff that you know quiet as kept you and I and the rest of the who are, and that we studied. We talked about that. That was what Nikola Tesla talked about. There's energy. He was like, hey, we can power the world through this. We can, we can power the world. So not to get too far off on that, but it's an ecosystem. It's geological features. There's mountains. There's oceans. There's volcanoes. There's a lot of stuff that you would think, all right, why is that in the middle? Why is that in the center of the earth? But you have to look at what powers the earth, um, and why the earth, rotates on its axis, and why the earth is as far away from the sun as it is. And to think that there's nothing else, to think that the surface is just the surface, but shit, what, 85 to 90% of the planet is water. You've got mountains taller than Mount Everest underwater. You know what I mean? So I
there's been
think if we
changes.
right, but and so right, so and my thing is if we, in speaking about this topic, we would have to stop and say, hey, listen, and then to answer the brother's question, yeah, it's a whole ecosystem. It's geological. You can. I don't want to say it mirrors what we have up here, but um, it's definitely real. It's definitely a real place, and I think that's why the military and the government kind of blocks that off.
And there's a treaty with all nations not to, have too much activity there. So they know something that they don't want everybody else to know.
Hmm.
And, but I will say, um, I will say this. There is, without getting too far left, from my research, I've come to the conclusion that there is inhabitants beyond the ice wall. And that
Okay,
ice
so
wall, go ahead.
if they're inhabitants, you mean human inhabitants, or you mean like animals? Because like, and I'll let you finish. That's just the question. Go ahead.
Let's just say
Because
there's
it, because it, because I'm saying if there's fish, if there's worms, snails, crustaceans, and all that back there, that means somebody's feeding off of it. But anyway, yeah.
put it this way. Put it this way. There is, based on my research, I'm just going to shoot from the hip. There is a lot of when I say inhabitants, they're actually, according to some research, they're beings that exist there, and they're not cut off from us, but they really, based on some writings, they don't want to deal
They
with
don't deal with us.
us because we are still immature to the point where we have a warlike mentality. We want to shoot and blow up shit, and they really don't want to be a part of that. But a lot of Earth's history can be unpacked based on what they hold on the other side of the ice wall. But do some research. There's a whole bunch of books and things and that you can get. There's a particular author that you can go to Amazon. You can go to Amazon, and there is a author. He has a slew of books. One book is called The Terra Infinita Map, The Dome Worlds, and you might want to go check that out. They have another. He has another book called The Dome in the Outer Space Projection. He has another book called The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. He has another book called Terra Infinita and the different civilizations on the other side of the ice wall. So
Okay.
Hitler traveled down. I got a whole book on how he went down to the ice walls and encountered beings. Then you have the Navy guy. I think he was a Navy. His name was Admiral Byrd. They sent the whole Navy fleet down there to the ice wall and encountered so forth and so on. All of this is documented. This is documented military
And
stuff.
that's the
So
thing. And that's what I
yeah,
wanted to say. Like, this is, we're not speaking about anything that hasn't been documented. You know what I mean?
right,
Like, these are scientific discoveries. Like, this is not something that we just made up.
right,
This is stuff that has been proven and, put on wax,
right.
put on paper. So this is not anything new. But I remember when we first started learning about, the Ashtars and the
Yeah,
Duros. You remember that?
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So that's back in the day. But my point is that this is nothing. But see, back then, we were crazy. Y'all, I mean, y'all, man, look, man, y'all crazy. Now this is scientific. These are scientific discoveries. This is evidence. This has nothing to do with how I feel, how you feel, how anybody else feels. They found lakes. They found life. What would be considered beyond the ice wall.
just do some research. I
And
just tell you,
right.
do some
And,
research.
and and yeah, I tell, yeah, research it if you want. To people that, yeah, who are the listeners, research it, because this ain't nothing new.
Right,
This has been going on. This is scientific
right,
discovery. We're just bringing it to this platform. But yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
research it. And
yep.
they got plenty of books on Hitler's travel. And if you just say, "Hey, we're nut jobs," just look into Admiral Byrd. Look up Admiral Byrd, real military operation that they
Really?
sent down to the ice wall. So let's get into this next question.
Okay. Yeah.
Next question is from a brother named Quan. He's from Philly. He says,
All
"Peace
right.
to the gods. How can one enjoy life if everything here seems bad? It's like a lot of this, let me see, a lot of this world. Let's see. It's like a lot of this world is bad, but it seems to be destructive to everyone." So basically, the brother's asking, how could you enjoy life if everything here seems to be bad and destructive? And I used to say a long time ago, it seems like somebody played a really bad trick on us when it comes down to like, okay, you like ice cream, that's bad. Oh, nigga, you eat hot dogs, that's bad. Damn, breathing the air, they dropping chemtrails, that's bad. Pussy, you like pussy? Yeah, I like pussy. That's bad too.
That-
It's good, but it's bad. It'll kill you. It's like, what the fuck? Like, anything here has been demonized. But has it been demonized? Or
It's
is it just out of
demonized.
place?
It's demonized. Like you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You say that it's mental. But go ahead.
So, to the brother Quan, the practicality, and this is the thing, and I went through this, And I think Tahuti went through it too, but we got to a point in our teachings where it became a struggle day to day because we were on this path of quote unquote perfection. And you got to make sure that you're doing this and make sure you're doing that. You got to dot your I's and cross your T's. And it became a real struggle, and it can get you down. And I remember talking to some other brothers about, just how do you stay, on the straight and narrow, so to speak. And some of the elders were like, look, you have to live a practical life. Let's just be practical about this. Everything isn't bad. Actually, nothing's bad.
Right.
What's your relationship to what you're experiencing is the question. That's the question. What is your relationship to the hot dog? What is your relationship to sex? What is your relationship to bad food? What is your relationship to anything? And I get it. They fucked up the air, the water. Everything is synthetic. They got chemicals in this, chemicals in that. Nothing's real. Everything's fake. Everything is convenient and microwaved.
Right.
Everything is ran through this process where you can get it quick.
Right.
I get it. But you have to understand that that was the journey of the soul, to come here and be something that you are not and see how you sink or swim.
Yeah.
The whole thing is for you to come here and fight and master it. That was the whole point.
Right.
You can't stay in victim mode of thinking, woe is me. No. How are you going to triumph is the question.
Right.
You came from a perfected state down to being everything that you're not. Everything goes down here. Everything you can imagine goes down here. From what you love, from what you hate, from some of the most heinous crimes you can think of, it goes down here. The thing is, what is your relationship to what you are experiencing? If you change the way you interface with your experiences, then half of the things that are occurring will just disappear. Because what some people are worried about right now, as far as politics and Trump and the government and the economy, that's not a part of my mental plane. I don't think about or worry about that. It's like non-existent to me. So it all boils down to what you want to subscribe to and what's your relationship to it. I hope that answers that brother's question. You want to add something?
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to Quan from Philly, West Philly, 60th and Market, and then North Philly, Broad and Lycoming, Erie Ave. And got a
All
shout
right.
out, man. Shout out to the Eagles. We just won the Super Bowl. But shout out to Quan, man, for answering that question, because here's the thing. I think that the fact that he's even asking that question means that from a spiritual, from evolving spiritually, he's it's like, hey, you remember the master, or the Sabai says, hey, man, when you ask the right questions, that's how I know.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so he's asking the right question, so he's on the right path. Like, okay, why is everything bad? And if he's from Philly, I already know. Like, I already know what he's going through and shit. You from Jersey, shit,
Right.
you know how shit is up there. Everybody's on top of each other, and it's all. So the fact that he's even asking the question is, shout out to Quan for that. But I would say every you have to find the beauty within the negativity. And I know that's difficult, but the fact that you're even asking the question, it lets me know that you're thinking beyond just instincts. You're thinking beyond just, hey, survival. It's like, yo, why do I have to do this? Why, if God is this, I have to be this, and I have to live here, and I have to do that. So I think that Quan is on the right path. What I would say is just continue on your spiritual growth. I don't know who you if you at the masjid, because Philly's it's big time Muslims. It's big time Muslim. That's why my name is Kareem. You know what I'm saying? So or my I'm Jehuti, but my birth name is Kareem because that's where we're from. Now, Philly is really big on Islam, so um, I would just say that continue to search. And if you have any more questions, I would talk to reach out to Brother Mordee for any type of readings, and even me if you need to get any more readings because I that question the question that he's asking I've asked that question and I know what I needed to answer that question.
Right.
Um, I know what I needed, so I don't want to get too deep in too much detail, but you know maybe if the brother if he's still available, you can present him with some readings and he can move forward from there. But he's asking the right question.
Right, right. And
So
that's the key.
peace.
When people start asking the whys, that's when you start getting into the greater mysteries of life.
Right,
Most people don't ask the why. They just think that they go along with the norm. They're
right,
not questioning anything. So when you start
right,
asking why, you're on your way.
right,
You know.
right. Exactly. That was a great question. I could get more in depth into it, but I don't want to do that on this forum. Um, but
Right.
he asked a really good question, so I know we got to move on. But yeah, he asked a good question, and so he's ready. He's ready to accept, at least accept it, and he can take it from there, and figure out which path he wants to go spiritually. So
Right.
peace,
The
peace, peace.
next
Thank you.
question is from Justine in Houston. Why are relationships today so toxic? Seems like there is a battle of the sexes.
Well, hmm, I'll say because you're in a European because we live in a European society.
I would concur. We have a European way of relating,
Yep.
and to us, post slavery, and keep in mind, even during slavery, we came up with our own way because we weren't allowed to do so much. So getting married was jumping a broom. It was just that simple. We came up with our
Hmm.
own shit.
Hmm.
Prior to slavery, the portion of us that were in bondage, because all black people weren't in slavery, but that's another topic. But prior to a portion of us being in bondage, you're talking about the people who had a culture and a way of life, a language, how they related to God, their spirituality, a diet. You had all of that. So I know this question is coming from being a product of today.
Hmm.
And the
Right
products of
today.
today, I get it. The toxic aspect of the relationships, like to what he said, because it's based on European concepts. We relate based on a form of love that is first of all the
It's
highest form.
foreign. It's foreign to us as far as like if we're dealing with our history. We're dealing with our roots. We're dealing with our ancestors. Continue.
Right. So when you look at love, love is a word, and we use that word, but that word does not encompass the unconditional aspect of the universe. When you look at nature, if you want a really good compass on how to gauge yourself, just look at nature and how it's structured. Because nature is not in its feelings about anything. Nature is not being programmed or taught how to be. It's genetically programmed to act how it's supposed to act.
Right.
We've gotten so far away from just our genetic programming,
Right.
but we also have been indoctrinated to think that love, the word, is a word that encompasses what true devotion looks like. And that's
Right.
completely wrong
Completely wrong. Right.
because love is given, love can be taken away based on these concepts.
And LOVE is based on conditions.
Exactly. Exactly. No true relationship should be based on conditions. Because as soon as a condition gets compromised, it's like, oh, nah, I
I'm
ain't.
out. I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm out.
exactly.
And so go. And so what was the sister's? Could you read her question again?
Justine, she said, why are relationships today so toxic? It seems like there's a battle of the sexes.
Okay. That was okay.
The second part of the question, the battle of the sexes, is the fact that I think, especially, and I hope the sisters don't get on me about this, but the feminist movement, you know, black women have aligned themselves with this feminist movement, thinking that they need to be liberated from something, right? But the feminist movement was that was a European woman movement
Yeah.
that was
Yes.
tied into the civil rights movement because they
Right.
wanted freedom from sitting home and being housewives and felt like they needed to be have their place in the world. That wasn't
Right.
black women's plight, because you got to keep in mind during civil rights they didn't want to give us shit. So it wasn't like
Right.
we were home
Right.
chilling and our wives were home living it up and we had the great job. And no, we was fighting.
Right.
White women got bored with being the model wife
Right.
and felt like I need to go out to the world and get it like my husband. So the feminist movement was
Absolutely.
born.
And then World War II is what really pushed the feminist movement over, because all of the white men were overseas.
Right.
And so how could America survive in industry and all of this with everybody, with all the men at war? Guess what? It was the white women.
Yep.
So we really didn't play too much of a part in that. We benefited off of the fact that all those white men were over in World War II and they were dying, and now they needed black men to go work in these factories and do this industry. And that's why you had the movement from Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, all the way up to Chicago, Detroit, Indiana. You know what I'm saying? That's what that movement was about. It was about, okay, they over there fighting and nobody gives a fuck about us. We sharecropping in the South. So hey, we need to make a better life. It was all about survival, man. So well, yeah, but that's a good question from the sister. But go ahead, man. I didn't want to segue, but I think that plays right into what you were saying.
So the battle of the sexes is basically you have black women who, they've taken on these masculine roles, and you got some sisters will say, "Well, we had to take on masculine roles because during the '70s, the black fathers wasn't in the home, and we had to fend for ourselves, and so forth and so on." But you got to understand that there was an effort and an agenda that
Hmm.
if you wanted to be on the system and the government took care of you, you couldn't have a man in the
Couldn't
home.
have a man, right?
So it was like a
Right.
catch 22, but this was all by design. So
By
now
design.
the sisters are feeling liberated. They latched themselves on to this feminist movement. I don't need a man. Some say I don't need a man. This, that, and the third. But long story short, you're having a battle of the sexes because you have a lot of sisters who are displaying and exuding male energy.
Absolutely.
So it's a battle. So now you have, your mate who's questioning you or challenging you when most men are supposed to be challenged by other men.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to be challenged consistently by your mate. You're supposed to be supported by your mate, and you're
Right.
supposed to be put in a position where the stress is taken off of you as a woman, and we're out here in the world making a way.
Right.
But you
Eh,
got music, movies, literature,
yes.
books,
Yes. Yes.
everything
Everything
feeding
to
this.
to the contrary of what, yeah, everything feeding, yeah, to
Yeah.
the contrary of what we. And so I want to tell the sister, like, the battle of the sexes is more like I said, the reason that's happening, that's a European concept. Um, white women have been the doormat to white men throughout American history. I can't speak for what happened over in Europe or, whatever. I mean, I'm sure it was the same way. But the sister that's a great question. But um, I think that we have to go back to, well, not go back, but I feel like it's more so just understanding your mate individual, it from like just breaking it down. I think it's more so about understanding your mate individually, because like her question is valid, but for me in my personal life, I don't deal with that. There's no battle of the sexes because of my age, because of what I require, because of where I'm at in my life, and so on and so forth. But it's the battle between male and female in this day and time, to me, is just, it's a European concept in this, in relation to just the rat race. Who's got to be better? Who's got to make more money? Who's got to do this? Because I feel like, and I was just thinking about this, today, if not yesterday, how I used to, I swear to God, I was thinking about it. Why was it different back when my grandparents stayed married? My mother's mother and father stayed married to their dying day. Now, they didn't live together. After the baby, after my uncle he was a grown ass man, 30 years old. My grand they went their separate ways, but they stayed married. So I think it's I think that it's just not. I think it's more of a conditioning. But I think about it a lot, and I'm like, I think that it was more so like back then we needed each other. You had to rely on each other. We needed each other. Hey, you're my neighbor, man. You growing this? Okay, all right, bet. You growing that? Okay, bet. We got to come together because we're coming out of slavery, and we can't read, but we know how to grow food. We know how to eat. We turned scraps into what we call soul food now. So I didn't want to get too long on it about the sister's question, but I think, but it's a good question because I think that it's deep rooted and it goes back,
It's definitely
generations.
it's definitely deep rooted,
Yeah,
and we are a product of something, and we have to deal with that. But there's definitely an agenda pushing the division as well as the battling. And like you said, there was a point where we needed each other. Now,
yeah.
a
Now
lot
we
of
don't. Yeah,
men and women are being taught that they don't need, a mate or whomever to be successful or to have stability. Now, here's the problem: the universe structured it a certain way, and it goes back to what I said before. The brother who asked the other question, why everything seems so bad, it boils down to your relationship to what you're experiencing.
right.
And when you have a bad relationship with nature, you're going to have a lot of problems. So if you look at the nature of relationships, a man is supposed to be with a woman. It's structured that way. And if you have a bad relationship with that natural order, you're inviting problems. You're
Right.
inviting struggle. You're
Right.
inviting all types of toxic this, that, and the third when you have a bad relationship with what is supposed to be naturally.
Right.
Naturally, most sisters are supposed to be comforting. They're supposed to be, you know,
Yes.
offer a level of
Feminine.
relief. Yes,
Yeah,
feminine
feminine.
energy.
Just that. And you know what's funny, because when I was over in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait, and Qatar, there's a reason, and we can look at it like, oh man, they just suppressing them, but no, there's a reason why women have to be covered.
Right.
There's a reason for that. And like if you do the science to it, it's not that they trying to. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's suppression. So that's not. I'm not trying to say that, but there's a reason why your woman can't walk around with some shorts up her ass, because you know what? You know what's funny? And this is just my own thoughts, because with being over there, I'm like, yo, they know motherfuckers, they know men ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? That was my, I'm like, they know men
The
have
nature, yeah, the nature of
if
a
yeah, the
man.
nature of a man. They
Right,
know that men are going to hunt. They know that. So how do you mitigate that? You cover your woman up. Now, it's extreme, cool, based on where you're from, where you live, what you're doing, but there's a reason for that. Like
yeah,
it's not because they just want to put women down. But if I love a woman and you know I've got kids and I'm doing this, why do I want her with some shorts up her ass and we walking down the street?
right,
No,
right,
cover up. And I don't need
right,
you to cover your face, but even over there, it gets to the point where hey, just cover your face so they don't even know they don't even need to know your identity. So
right.
so it's not because guess what? At the end of the day, and this is and then I'm gonna let you have it. I was talking about how men they was like oh men walk in front of women right but I think this is old hat down but it was like yeah a man walks in front of his woman and his family because when the trouble hits he's the first one to catch it
Exactly. I was
when the
explaining this
when
to somebody
right
recently.
when the bullets fly I'm gonna put my hands up put my family behind me
Right.
and
First
y'all get the
contact.
yeah I'm gonna be the one that has I'm the sacrificial lamb and you know me personally I've been the sacrificial lamb so and I'm okay with that that's the role that the divine has put me in so that and so to answer the sister's question again you know I think it depends on the mentality of the person that you're dealing with and and I think that it's a level of maturity and I think that also if she's speaking about black people you're talking about a you know we've been you know and that's this is what we talked about just you know going through the slave trade going through slavery going through not being able to read going through all these civil rights movements having to fight we've been fighting to fight to just to have equal rights we've been fighting to fight so you know we it play pull yourself up by your bootstraps yeah we did that in Tulsa and they massacred us the Black Panthers, hey, we're gonna do the free breakfast program for the kids. Oh man, quit pro quo with your boy fucking whatever his name was, and you know what I'm saying even the Nation of Islam with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like that's not what it used to be, where it was like, yo, we're gonna have our own grocery stores, we're gonna feed our own people, we're gonna do this. So everything that we've tried to do, sister, to your question it has been they tried to cut it off. Even today, it's like yo, and I'm not even a Black Lives Matter, you know, pundit, but I'm just like yo, we don't want none of that shit. We don't want none of it. So that's where uh and so imagine how your man is gonna feel when he's getting his joint chopped off at every turn, trying to support his family. And so that's where so the problem is not necessarily ours.
We
Peace
both
on that.
male and female, just from, and I'm speaking of people of color.
Yep.
We we're fighting a different type of fight, and we're products of something, and we're damaged goods,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to figure out a more healthier way going forward. Now I'm gonna tell you how the universe works. If you're not a part of what the universe needs in its forward movement, you will get recycled.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So everybody's just having a grand old time doing them. I am pro-choice, whatever it is, free will. But understand there's consequences based on just universal structure. When you go against what is ordained naturally, there's a
Right.
price to pay. I'm not
Absolutely.
here to punish you for anything, but you best believe in some shape, form, or fashion, the universe starts to recycle things, meaning you get removed from this plane, recycle back, you reincarnate back and pick up where you left off in a different scenario with your karmic makeup. So keep in mind, we are going through a level of a purge right now naturally because there's a lot of us who have not evolved to the level where we have the critical thinking skills to move into a new paradigm.
And
So
especially not as a unit.
right, exactly not as a unit. This
Right.
is an individual thing.
Yeah.
So I have I have empathy. I have compassion for all people. But when it comes to my people, I understand that we have some bad roots and some
We do.
decaying plants that are in there with the good ones. The
We do.
universe will recycle that. That it's just not that. I mean, that's not my call. It is what it is.
Right.
So, far as the relationships are concerned, my advice is to pick someone that is compatible to you.
Right.
Compatibility is like paramount.
And so I'll say this to that. We've lost that aspect of it. We've lost that aspect of that. So if you look at other cultures, right, that didn't go through what the Africans that turned into African Americans went through. I got a doctor. She's Indian. She's Hindu. Man, do you realize like it's sacrilege? She don't understand why. And I'm not to shoot any shots, and I want to keep it cool, but she does not understand why. She don't understand the concept of being a single parent. Like that just it doesn't equate with her. Like that doesn't. It's like what? Huh? Huh? What? Because of their culture.
Right.
She does not get it. She doesn't understand it, and she can be offensive sometimes because I'm like, yo, man, fuck out my business. Who you talking to? But my point is that it's cultural, man. We've lost that. And you know, shoot, you know, and man, listen, man, the best I've been treated were by African women. They call me like I would go get Kayla's hair braided over here. They call me daddy. And it's not no, like, hey, I'm trying to get with you, but it's like, yo, you the man. And you remember Marguerite and them when you was, doing your thing. But my point is that look, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, they were from
We've been,
Senegal. They were from
yeah,
Senegal.
yeah, Senegal, yeah, they Wolof, probably Wolof. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is that our good brother, Ako Adili,
Oh,
Okafor.
yeah, Dilly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but my point is like it's a cultural thing.
Did yeah.
We've lost our culture, and so we don't value that shit no more, man. You know why? Because now we got money. We
Money.
can provide on our own. We don't need each other anymore. When in actuality, you really do. It's a mirage. So yeah,
Right. Yeah, the culture component is paramount because coming from different cultures, male babies, female babies are groomed for family life.
right.
They're groomed to be husbands. They're groomed to be wives. They're structured around that. So that is their reality. Displaced Africans are a damaged good, and we have to figure this thing out one way or the other. Now you got two choices. You consciously make a decision to change and start with yourself, or the universe would take you down the path of nature, and so forth and so on. The path of nature is not a nice one. So I say that to say that we really have to just start with ourselves and instill these principles into our children
Into our
so they
children.
can go and continue the process. But one way or another, the universe is getting rid of what it don't need right now.
Right.
So if you just turn on the TV, go online, you see what's going on, and one by one, one by one, one by one. And I'm gonna say this to close out. If these subgroups, L, G, and the rest of the letters, if they can come up with a culture of their own to say, you know what, we don't care what y'all think, we don't care what y'all got to say about us. This is how we're going to live and what we're going to do. And they live it. There's no reason why we can't say, hey, this is what we want. This is what we're going to do. And we live it. If they
You
can
know
do
what?
it, we can do it.
That's crazy that you say that because I've often kind of reflected on, man, yo, who the fuck in their community like is up there fucking kicking motherfuckers in the ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, who's representing them? Because yo, you better not fucking say shit about them niggas. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, yo, you know what I'm talking about.
It goes back to what you
I'm
said.
like, what the fuck?
They have a culture.
Culture.
They created a culture.
And you better not fuck with it. Because if you do, now you gotta worry about, and I'm like, yo, they touching politicians. They're touching. They span the whole. They've spanned it. So you, at least now, I don't know about now, and I don't know about the next 2 to 3 years. But it's always gonna be a fight with them. Always, you're gonna have to fight with them.
You
So
know, and you know why that
it's the
is? You know why it's always going to be a fight with them? Because they are, for lack of better terms, an unnatural anomaly. It's almost like a chick who wants to be a dude. She has to fight the rest of her life to be something she's not at all cost.
at
Every
all
day,
costs.
she got to fight against hormones. She got to fight
Yep.
against DNA. She got to fight against her emotions. So when
Yep.
you have a group who is trying to be something that is not naturally ordained, you
Right.
have to fight everybody to maintain it.
Right.
I'm not here to judge. Do
No.
you?
No,
But
not
I
at all.
get what
But
you're.
yeah.
But I get what you're saying. It's going to be a fight, and it's really a fight against yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, and because and I think that also that what all and then to close out, they're unified.
Correct. So we could take a page out of their book.
Exact. Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. They're unified. And so,
Right.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing. We've tried that already. So my take on us unifying is that it can't happen here.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
It can't happen here.
I'm glad you said that because one thing about the African, and when I say African, this let me say melanin dominant being.
Gotcha. Yeah, because yeah.
If we've been there and done that, the beauty of the universe allows us the potential to create whatever that hasn't been done. That's the beauty of where we're going.
Right.
We can create anew.
Right. And you know what? You know what I want to say, and you can close out after this. I remember you taught me this shit when we started our sun cycle. Remember sun cycle?
Correct.
So look at what's happening right now. They're trying to erase our history. You know what I'm saying? They trying the Smith. You heard about the Smithsonian in DC.
Right.
You heard about them erasing Medgar Evers. You heard about
Yeah.
them trying to erase
Yep.
what's
Yep.
his name? Jackie Robinson. I
Yep.
didn't mean to say what's his name, God. Like these are
Yeah.
they're trying to erase. But guess what? But guess what? You remember you told me this shit back in the day. When their time is up, that's when they start scraping and scratching and trying to erase us.
Right.
That was what we learned back in the day, and I remember you had that conversation with me about that. Like, so it's and black people. Let's look at this as something like, oh, they scared. They scared.
They are
They're
scared.
scared. The sun cycle that was something we did almost 20 years ago, but it's still relevant.
Yeah.
So, but
It's
anyway,
very relevant.
yeah.
But yeah, they're scared because here's the thing. Not to be even dealing with race, because race is a construct.
Right. Yeah. It's not necessarily about race. Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's not about white or black because it's real more so about poor, rich or poor. But anyway, but we're not going there. But go ahead. Yeah.
But let's get to the just basic fundamentals so I can close out.
Yeah.
The original prototype for the planet was melanin dominated. It wasn't called black. It wasn't called African American. It was a being. And melanin dominant genetics was just the right prototype to exist on the planet due to the conditions.
Due to the conditions, right?
Walk with me here.
Yep.
Now, the planet as we know it is reverting back to its original phenotype. It has no choice but to do that. The entire planet is browning. There's no way to stop it unless they're going to block out the sun. And they've been talking about blocking out the sun. So where we're going, no matter if they remove names, take down statues, this, that, and the third, they can't stop this train. The thing is, I encourage people, the human family, to get in tune and in sync with the natural order of things as much as you can and ride this wave, because we're changing and the cycle is ending, and you can't make a leap to something new if you're stuck and operating in something old. It's just not going to happen.
And a man said, and you know this man, and you might know this quote, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Mother Nature, the earth, she ain't going nowhere. She'll get rid of your ass. She ain't going nowhere.
Right. And that's what I mean by
That's what
recycling.
it is. Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why I said that.
So allow people to have their fun and enjoy themselves. I have no qualms with pro-choice, free will, none of that. Do you enjoy your existence?
Enjoy your existence.
Because your karmic paperwork has nothing to do with mine on why I'm here. But on that note, we're gonna wrap it up. Another great show, The Two Initiates. I'm your brother Mordi, my co-host, brother Tahuti, and yeah. Until we meet again, I want to say peace to everybody. Everybody be blessed, and we out. Peace.